Okay, welcome to Chapter 2. We are going to be talking about storyboards and scenarios, and you're going to see how to program a very exciting story with a snowman and a snow woman. So, the first thing you want to do when you are designing your code is to figure out what the problem is that's going to be solved. And a lot of times I'm going to give it to you. Sometimes you're going to figure it out all on your own, and I'm hoping to do a fair amount of that this semester. So we're going to practice both. So once you have figured out the problem to be solved, now you need to design a solution, and there are a few ways to do that. We're going to talk about storyboard design. You might have heard about it with, I don't know if you've talked to anybody in advertising or know anybody in advertising or ever seen a movie about advertising. A lot of times they'll do a storyboard to plan out what they're going to be shooting. So here's our story. We've got some people outside. They are snow people, and there's a snowman, and he's basically trying to pick up a snow woman. And what he's going to do is say ahem to get her attention, and he's going to blink his eyes. She's not going to respond the way he hopes. So how do you start? Well, you're going to create this initial world, put the people in. At this point, you all are pretty good at that. And here are the two snow women talking, and here he is. And you could sketch it out ahead of time, or you could write it out ahead of time. It's really what your skill set is and what you're comfortable with. So here you can see that they have drawn a description where his eyes are going to roll up and down, and you don't have to worry about sound and text. Or again, you can just write that out. Another way is you can make some screenshots, and it's pretty easy and fun to do with Alice. I'll show you the button to push for that in a second. So here's your initial scene, and here's where he's trying to catch it, and this is where she turns. So you can see here's telling you the story a little bit. This is what I prefer, is just some text where you just write it out. And if you see these words, these are going to be what we call our different methods. So pay attention to that. Snowman turns to face, snowman blinks eyes and calls out, and then snow woman turns around. And this and means that these two things are going to happen together. So the nice thing about Alice, drag and drop, you can just test it out. So what you're writing is a program, and we've talked about it. This is a list of instructions that's going to have the objects do things. So how do you write it? Well, the plan is this, and you'll recognize this is exactly the same set of words as was in the textual storyboard, and we're going to use this to guide us. So how do we translate it? Sometimes you can do it with just a single step. So snowman turns to face the snow woman. If you look at Alice, and you were to click on snowman, you would see that this is an available method. And this is what's known as the argument. This is what the snowman is turning to face to. That doesn't make sense, but you get the idea. And then sometimes you have composite actions, which means more than one instruction, and you're going to combine them in a way. So for example, he says ahem, and he raises and lowers his eyes. These are really useful buttons right here, and you played with them a little bit in class. Do in order and do together. You can just drag them up into here and put instructions in. So let me show you an example. Okay, I'm going to play this for you first, and then we'll go through the code. So here he is turning him. You can kind of see his eyes. They're a little creepy. She turns around and blushes. So let's do it one more time. He turns to face, ahem, the eyes go, she turns, she blushes. All right, so what does the code look like? Well, here it is. It's not that much, actually. If you look, here's your do together. Here's your first set. So they did a little differently than I would have. Snowman turns to face. Then he says ahem. And then at the same time that the snow woman head turns to face him, this is when the eyes are moving up and down. And you want the eyes, you can see and do in order. It makes sense for the left eye, for example, to first go up, then go down. But at the same time, the right eye is going up and going down. And then her face turns red, and she turns away. And that's it. And then they set her face to turn white again. So like I said, you could, if you wanted to, have these be together, have the ahem be together, but you do need to say the ahem first before she's going to turn. So you need to think about those kind of things. What is the order that you want things to happen? Okay, back to the... Okay, so what did we learn? Here are the concepts. Program instructions may have arguments. So you saw that the snowman turned to face the snow woman. The snow woman was the argument in that case. Or if we talked about moving, you would be moving a direction and distance. So those would be the arguments. Those would be the things that you need to specify after you use move. Move is the method. These are the arguments. And we talked about do together and do in order, how they could be nested one inside the other. I'll show you that again when we go back to the program. So important, so important is to test it out. I would highly recommend you're saving frequently, and then you just test it. And the great part of Alice is that you can test it at any point. You don't have to really wait for the code to be done. That is different than most programming, so enjoy it while you can. And I would do it step by step. So you plan it out first. Don't just jump in, plan it out first, and then you write it, and you test it as you do it. So write and then run, write and then run, write and then run. Because if you write all this code and there's a mistake, you might have to delete everything you did, and that's really sad. Okay, comments. So we talked about this in class a little bit. Sometimes when you write a code, it's not going to be totally obvious to someone who's reading your code as to what's going on. And we talked about in class how important it is to share code or be able to share code. So you need to put in comments to make it clear. And this is what I'm going to show you next. Okay, so this looks really similar to the same program. It runs exactly the same way because it has the same code in it. What's different about it is it has these comments. So these green lines, because they have the double / marks in it, the program knows not to really pay attention to it. It's just for the reader. And the way you drag it in, you see this little button down here? You just pull it in and you drag it in, and then it lets you write. So you could just type whatever you want. All right, and that's just you leaving notes, sometimes for yourself. That's actually not a bad way to leave a note for yourself. Hey, this is what I was doing. Remember to go back to this, or if you look at it a year later, you want to know, why did I write it that way? I don't know what I was talking about. So comments help with that. Going back to nested, since I mentioned that in a second, you see the do together block? It's kind of a grayish blue block, and then inside of it is do in order, and it's kind of like those little Russian toy dolls where one thing is inside another. This is what nesting is all about. We'll talk about it more in class. Okay, so just to finish this up, we talked about comments. It can be a description of the action. I highly recommend it, and in fact, I will require it sometimes. And it's a description of also a small piece of the code inside of a whole method. And that's it. Hope you had fun.